All right, we are recording the interview of David Barry. The interview is being conducted by David Morse from the Wright State University's Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Wright State University's New Media Incubator in Dayton, Ohio. It is 4:55 p.m. on February 17th, 2017. All right, David. Let's start off with when and where you were born.
I was born at Wright-Parrott Air Force Base in Fairborn, Ohio, March 22nd, 1991.
Okay. All right. So Wright-Patt Air Force Base, I'm assuming then one of your parents had to be military.
Yes, my father was.
Your father was? Okay. Who were your parents?
My parents are Thomas Barry and Cindy Barry.
Okay.
My dad was he was an accountant in the Air Force. He served, I think, 8 years before he had a pacemaker put in, and then got medically retired. Mom works as a student driver instructor.
Very good. That's awesome. So, did you have any siblings?
Yep, I got an older brother and a younger sister.
Okay.
My older brother is Josh. He was in the Marine Corps for a while. He's out now. He's going to Ohio State he wants to be a PE teacher. So he's going for that.
That's great.
And then I got my younger sister. Her name's Heather. She's at Urbana University right now, going for her degree in social working.
Wow. Yeah, so am I. Good luck to her. What were you doing before you decided to go into the service?
All right, so before I went into the service, I'll just start with, so I graduated high school. I was a cross-country, track, runner all throughout high school, so I was pretty athletic. And then after high school, I went to Clark State Community College, and I was going there to be a firefighter and an EMT. I ended up getting my EMT basic and my firefighter level 1, and then I started working for German Township's fire department. Did that for a few years. Was also doing little jobs too, working at Olive Garden, movie theaters, Sears. Nothing too big, but I loved doing the fire department thing. That was great. Got to go on a lot of cool calls, a couple of house fires, a lot of auto accidents. So I got experience to a little bit more when I was younger. I was also a state tested nurse's assistant and a first responder. So I worked at the nursing home too for a little bit. Although that didn't really pan out too well for me.
That's funny. Wow. So I mean, you were doing quite a bit before you joined the service. What made you decide to join the service?
Well, when I was in high school, I didn't really have that positive of a view on the military. Just kind of thought they were all join the Army, you're going to be a bullet sponge or something like that. That was my initial thought process. But every male in my family had joined the military, so I kind of had that. But it wasn't until I was doing the firefighter and the EMT thing, and then I started partying a little bit too much my first time going around in college. So I ended up dropping out, and I started also working at a factory. And just working at that factory, I just hated life. I was living with a couple buddies, and they were kind of going down a path I didn't want to follow. So I kind of noticed my life wasn't heading in the direction that I wanted it to go. So I started looking into the military as an option.
Okay.
First thing I did was I went over to the Navy. Since I had the emergency medical technician experience, I wanted to originally stay in the hospital setting, and I went to the Navy and told the recruiter, I was like, hey, I want to be a corpsman. He was like, oh, you already know what a corpsman is. Okay, great. So I was like, all right, but that's what I want to do. They're like, cool, take the ASVAB, go to MEPS, do all this stuff. And then once I got done with it, they said, all right, you can't be a corpsman. Your test scores are fine. Corpsman's just not available right now, but we can make you a submarine cook, or you can go and fuel airplanes. I was like, I don't want to do any of those things. Those things sound awful. So then I went over to the Air Force, and I was training to be a pararescue at that point. So I'd go over to the Y, and I'd work on my swimming and whatnot. However, found out I wasn't the best at swimming, so that, and I heard that they drown you and then they bring you back to life, and that seemed a little too extreme for me. So then I finally went over to the Army, and I told the Army, I was like, hey, I want to be a medic. I already got the EMT certification and everything. And they were like, cool, great, we'll make you a medic. Signed the paperwork, did everything. They're like, oh, sorry, medic's not available. And I was finally like, oh, fine, what else is there? I've literally been through all the branches that offer medic, and they're like, well, you could be a Cav Scout. I was like, oh, cool, what's a Cav Scout? So they showed me the recruitment video, and it's got people ramping on dirt bikes and people in ghillie suits, and they're driving tanks. I was like, wow, that's awesome. Cool, I'll do that. So, so I joined in with the Army. That was 2010.
Oh, 2010. Okay. Now, how much different? I mean, kind of jumping forward ahead, I'm interested. I myself joined, and recruiters told me one thing, real life experience was another. How much different was it after the recruiter, what you saw, the promotional video, compared to what you actually experienced?
Oh, I never got to see dirt bikes. I only got to get in a ghillie suit, I think, once or twice, and that was just for training. It was nothing like my experience was nothing like that training video.
Right, yeah.
Not at all. Like, I was actually a little upset about that.
Yeah. So, all right, let's jump back real quick. Your family's thoughts. You're deciding you're gonna join the Army. What was your family's, response to you deciding to join the Army or enlist into the Army?
Well, I guess I would start at my younger sister, and I'll work my way up. My sister really didn't have too much say in it. She was in high school at the time. She didn't really say anything about me joining the military. My brother, since he was a Marine and I was joining an Army, was giving me you're not as good, or the Army isn't as good as the Marines, why you want to go join them. My father, since he was an accountant in the Air Force, was upset that I went combat arms into the Army instead of going into the Air Force and doing a desk job, kind of closer to what he did. And my mother stopped talking to me for 2 weeks when I came home from the recruiter's office and told her I signed up for Cav Scout. So that was a little interesting. Then I had both my dad and my brother. Since I did the cross country thing and track in high school, I mean, physically I was pretty fit, but they were telling me that mentally I wasn't gonna make it, and they just kind of gave me more of a drive to, like, oh, you're gonna tell me I can't do it? Watch me. Right. And yeah, made them eat their words.
Right. So, all right, jumping into basic training. How was basic training?
Ooh.
Or boot camp, I guess.
Well, my basic training was called OSET, because I was since I was combat arms, my basic and my AIT, which in the Army normally you spend a couple weeks at basic learning basic rifleman, marching and stuff, and then you go to AIT and you learn your job. Right. Well, OSET is just those things combined, and so I had my basic and my training all with the same drill instructors, same time. So it was long. I did it. I was one of the last people to go through Fort Knox in Kentucky. They closed that training base, or at least they stopped training scouts in armor there. When I got to basic and found out that it was a lot different than what that recruiter video showed me, because my mindset before the military was firefighter, EMT, STNA, first responder, save lives, basically. And then I get into this kind of military setting where it's the complete opposite of that, and it's all about taking life and destroying the enemy. And that was at first really hard for me to get over. I remember going up to one of my drill sergeants, Drill Sergeant Summerlin. He's probably the main drill sergeant I think of the most. And I remember telling him that I didn't think that I was going to be able to kill anyone. And they called me a conscientious objector and whatnot for that little bit of time. But I ended up going through all the training and doing everything I needed to do. But what really stuck with me was I wasn't fighting for myself or for pretty much my country. How Drill Sergeant Summerlin put it is that you're just fighting for the guys to your left and to your right. And when I eventually got to my unit and became more, that unit cohesion started happening, and we all started becoming brothers and just spending every day with each other. I mean, it just really hit home as why to fight. I'm just fighting for them.
Right.
So, I mean, in basic, I mean, that put me on the radar in the beginning when I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this job that I just claimed to do, because all I saw on it was a recruitment video of people jumping dirt bikes and whatnot. So I was like, it was a big shock. Plus, it was the first time I'd really left home. It was the first time I was away from my parents and everything. First time really I was out there to either succeed or fail based upon how well I tried. But, I mean, other than that, I mean, like my dad and my brother were a little right, where the physical aspect of it I was completely fine on. But I mean, just getting the kind of like the mass punishment and getting punished for other people's mistakes really bothered me, just because it happened from day one to the last day of basic. They're supposed to go through like those cycles where the first week it's heavily you can't do anything right. Second week, all right, you're starting to do a little bit right, and third week we're training you. Well, throughout my whole basic, it was the whole time one person did something wrong, you all were paying for it. So it was a big adjustment. I had to change definitely the way that I thought, or my mindset. I had to kind of take away all that EMT and firefighter. Hey, be empathetic. Hey, go and help your patients. Well, now I didn't have patients anymore. I had combatants.
Right.
So I mean, it was definitely a big switch. But I'm definitely glad that I didn't let stop me from doing the things that I did, or because my military career could have ended right there, really easily, but it didn't. So.
Yeah. So everybody's got that one story from basic training that just is an odd story, just one of those like really odd stories. What's one of those like really odd stories from basic?
Really odd story from basic.
Or funny or amusing, yeah.
Well, the first odd one that comes to mind, it's not really funny, so a little amusing, I guess, a little dark. We had a dude that kind of got to the same point that I did when I was in basic. Just kind of really didn't want to be there, didn't think he could do the job, didn't think that it was right for him, and he ended up trying to commit suicide. Well, the way that he did this was we had to carry this little 2-quart canteen around a pouch, or had a lanyard to it, so it was basically a satchel. And so this kid takes his 2-quart canteen and takes the rope or the lanyard part of it, comes down to the first floor bathroom where everyone is, and tries to hang himself in the bathroom. Well, we were all down there. If he had gone 2 or 3 floors up, no one was going to be there for several hours. So it was just kind of interesting. And then the drill sergeant afterwards was like, oh, because they're not really supposed to touch you unless you're like running from them or trying to hurt them or doing something with ammo or so they were just like, oh, please just take off running, because he was only in there for maybe 5 minutes before someone walked in and kind of pulled him out of there. But once he got pulled out, then we had to watch him for the rest of the time. And the drones were just like, take off running if you want. You want to leave so bad, go ahead and leave. Well, he does that. He takes off running, and you just see these big linebacker guys just take off after him. And then we had another dude try to go AWOL because he was going to get recycled, and he ended up sneaking off at night and going down the railroad tracks, because there was apparently railroad tracks that ran through our base somewhere, and he just walked there through town and tried to pick up a taxi, but the taxi guys all knew that if they see someone in a uniform, they don't got a unit patch on their arm, because in basic you're bare.
Right.
To send him back to the base. And that's what happened. And so, I mean, those are kind of were sad stories, but you know, they're a little unique, and they help drive me to. I kind of use them as an example to not end up like that, or to if things were going to go bad, that it could always go worse, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's got one of those.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a little more of your MOS. It's an MOS, right?
Yep.
Correct. Yeah. You describe a little bit more into detail. I mean, I know we talked that it wasn't the riding motorcycles and all that other stuff, but give me a little more detail as far as what it is.
All right. So when I joined as a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout. And what traditionally a Cavalry Scout does, what I would do in training and in the field, was we'd do, it'd be normally small man teams, 2 to 4 people, or say or so. We'd go out and we set up an OP, which an OP is an observation point. And what we'd do is camouflage ourselves. We'd make a little hut. We'd have to walk like half a mile away or a quarter mile away to go get sticks and leaves, and then bring them to our area and kind of set up a little hideaway. Have to have overhead cover and behind you. Pretty much our instructors training us when we did this in the field would just walk around the woods, and if they found us, we lost. And that meant that you would be doing push-ups or running until they found everyone else. And if they didn't find you, well, good on you, you did it well. So we'd go out and what we're doing these OPs is we observe the enemy. And if it's a small force and something that the 2 or 4 of us can take on, we're to engage the enemy. If it's a larger force, like trucks or tanks or large group of people, what we would do is we'd call for fire. We get on the radio, and the artillery or mortars or whomever is in your rear, you'd give them the coordinates of the enemy, and they'd send in direct over. So that's what traditionally a scout does right now, but it's not quite what I did when I deployed.
Okay. So let's talk about, before we get to too much further, I want to talk about, so you're there at your basic training, or I'm sorry, what was it called again? The
OSET.
OSET, right. You get done with OSET, right? Past that, and then where are you going from that point? Are you then going to your first duty, or do you have another assignment or another training after that?
So when I was in basic, like I said, I was pretty physically fit. I had ended up scoring, I think, a 299 on our PT test, our physical training fitness test. It took me about our sit-ups, my 300 is a perfect score. The sit-ups kept me from getting a perfect score for about a year until the military, and then I found out the technique and was able to get perfect scores on my PT test for the rest of my time in the military. But since I got such a high score and so close to perfect in basic training, I got voluntold to go to airborne school. I remember the drill sergeant coming out and saying, "All right, who wants to go to airborne school?" And I think two of my drill sergeants were airborne, so they were pulling strings, and they wanted to make sure that they had some airborne slots to give out to their trainees. So you had some people raise their hand and go, "Yeah, I want to do it." Well, enough people to fill up the thing. I'd never even heard about airborne school. I was like, "What is it?" And then they go, "You jump out of planes." I'm like, "And they pay you $250 more." I'm like, "Well, okay." I had a girlfriend at the time, gave her a call. I was like, "Hey, they're thinking about making me airborne, and I don't know, I might take it." And she was like, "What? No, I've looked it up online. It's awful. Don't do that." So, I mean, at first I went back and was just like, I came in here to be a scout and whatnot. I don't know about adding extra special things on top of that. But the drill sergeant came at me a couple more times, just bringing it up, going, "Hey, you thought about airborne school yet? Hey, you plan on doing airborne school yet?" Well, after thinking it over, I finally was like, you know what, this girl I'm dating, you know what, she's not here, she's not living this life for me. So I'm going to do what I want. And airborne school just, at some point, started sounding more and more thrilling and cool. So I walked into wasn't even my drill sergeant's office. It was our in basic, we promote like one private to like the company team leader,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I went into his bay where his bunk was, and I told him, I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing airborne school. He's like, you were already signed and put down on the list weeks ago. And I was just like, what? So I was like, all right. So I volunteered, and yet still got voluntold. So then I went after basic training. Basic training ended in I think somewhere around in March. And then I went straight over to from Fort Knox, Kentucky, to Fort Benning, Georgia, for jump school. And that was about 3 weeks long. First week, you're just kind of getting used to the harness, getting used to how the stuff operates and whatnot. Second week is you jump from a tower. I forget how tall it was, but I remember someone saying that scientists have calculated that if you'll jump from this height, you'll jump from the height of a bird, just because of like whatever is going to stop you in your brain is going to stop you in this tower, I guess, before you can have a bird. Their logic.
Yeah.
But I did all that just fine. And the last week was jump week, which you jump 5 times, and all my jumps went well. I can remember the first time I was ever in the aircraft. Well, the first time I was ever in an aircraft, I jumped out of it. I didn't get to land. Well, I did land, just not in the plane. So that was unique.
That was your first time ever flying.
Yep.
Yeah.
First time I was ever in a plane, because I mean they bussed me from Ohio to Kentucky, and then they bussed me again from Kentucky to Georgia. So I'd never been in a plane. Can go join airborne school and got to jump out of a plane. Got to ride in a plane for the first time, and then got lucky enough to jump out of it. But I can just remember in my head going, why am I about to jump out of a perfectly good airplane? And then it's kind of like this pit set into my stomach, and I never wanted to like just barf and pass out like as bad as I did then. But then like 2 weeks before that, you're doing nothing but training to do this one act. So all of a sudden it was just like a snap, and next thing I know, I'm just walking out the door and doing everything the way I'm supposed to be doing it. And it was great. I mean, I love the free fall, or the you got about 3 or 4 seconds before your parachute opens up. I mean, in that case, you're just being blown around, and which is all fun. And then you got about a minute or two, a couple minutes of just falling down to the ground in your parachute. But then once you start seeing that ground come a little closer, and you're still falling pretty fast, you start to get a little nervous again. And then they teach you how to land right in airborne school. There's a specific way to do it so you don't get hurt. Well, it takes you a couple times. It takes you a few rounds of practice before you really get that down. I mean, it's supposed to go like legs, thigh, pull up muscle, and you roll. Well, most of the time it just goes ass, feet, head. But no, other than that, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Had a good time.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you're descending down to Earth, the parachute open, do you have any way to steer yourself or direct yourself, or is it just pretty much a fall?
You have a little bit of maneuverability. Like once you jump out and you count to 4, and then your parachute deploys. If your parachute doesn't deploy in 4 seconds, you need to be pulling your reserve, depending upon what you're jumping out of. If you're jumping out of a Black Hawk or a Chinook or a C-130 or a C-17, C-17 and C-130 are pretty much similar, but when you start getting into helicopters and different things to jump out of, there's little variations. But once you jump out, you immediately got things you need to start checking on. Once your canopy deploys, you need to look up at it and make sure there's no holes. If you didn't jump out right, your riser can get all twisted up, so you may have to like grab them and pull them apart and kick. So you'll start spinning real quick, and then you get real dizzy. And then right after you do all that, then you look around and you see, okay, is anyone on top of me? Am I about to be on top of anyone else? Is someone gonna run into me? And then if you notice that something's about to go into you, you just grab your risers. If you want to go forward, you pull them down. You want to go backwards, you pull the back ones down. To the right, pull like the front one down. Or But that was when I jumped at airborne school. I jumped with the T-10 parachutes, and then when I got to my unit and everything, they came out with a new parachute called the T-11, which a lot of people got hurt in the initial deployment of those parachutes. Of the new ones, they just seemed to have little bugs. I had a couple buddies of mine just get really messed up, just from malfunctions of the parachute or them not doing the proper actions. Like they put holes on the corners of these T-11s, and if you landed on top of someone, what you're supposed to do is run on their parachute real quick and get out of their way real quick, because if you don't, you're going to steal the air up from under them, or they're going to steal your air, and you're just going to fall, and then the same thing's going to happen when you're under them. Your canopy will redeploy, but you're then stealing the air from the guy above you, and then he's going to fall.
Wow.
And then at that point, just pretty much comes in, well, who's going to hit the ground the hardest? So there was a lot of things to look out for and whatnot. You didn't want someone kind of flying into you and getting tangled up. I mean, so you were kind of busy that way falling down, and then once you get close to the ground, you're not really worried about anyone hitting you. You're just worried about hitting the ground.
Right, right. And how much of this was, I guess, repetitive motion and actual cognitive thinking it through and being aware of your surroundings?
Well, being aware of our surroundings was just something that was hit hard for us, like from day one. Just having kind of emotional awareness and environmental awareness was big. I was chant something in basic. Was attention to detail. Teamwork is key. And every time we did a push-up, on our way down, we'd have to say attention to detail, and then on our way up, we'd have to say teamwork is key. So that attention to detail just kind of stayed with me throughout my entire military service, just because everything I was doing in the military was, if I jumped out of an airplane, if I wasn't paying attention, not only is that my life, but that could also very well easily be someone else's life. Right. And there was a lot of aspects in the military that were kind of like that, so it taught me really quickly that pay the fuck attention and do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. All right, so you said this was about 3 weeks
Yep.
of training, learning how to jump out of a plane. So you get done with that. Where do you go from there?
All right. So, and then when we were in basic, it was, they gave out our duty assignments. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys dropped airborne school because they got the duty assignment they wanted. They were going to Fort Carson or Alaska or something like that, and they didn't want to go to airborne school anymore. I looked at the list and it said Bamberg. I'm like, Bamberg? Where the heck is Bamberg? Is that in the United States? Well, I didn't have access to the internet in basic or anything like that, so I couldn't look it up. I went and asked the drill sergeant. I was like, "Do you know where Bamberg is?" He didn't know. So I wrote a letter home to my dad and asked him, "Hey, can you get on the internet and find out where," I thought it was Fort Bamberg or something. I was like, "Can you find out where this is and where I'm going in the Army?" And he came back and he was like, "Yeah, that's in Germany." I was like, "Oh, wow, okay." So he goes up and my dad sent me some research on the place, and I guess it was a ball bearing facility for Nazi Germany in World War II that we just bombed. Well, after airborne school, I got on a plane and I went over to Germany. Well, I thought I was going to Bamberg, but my orders changed on me as soon as I got there, and I ended up going to Bravo Troop 191 Cav in Schweinfurt, Germany. And Schweinfurt, Germany was a really small town, really tiny base. We were the only combat arms unit there. There was combat engineers, and there was MPs there as well, some logistics people, but it was a really, really small base. I had never in my wildest imagination thought that I'd ever go to Germany, let alone live there for 3 years. Oh. But, I mean, it was a really good time. I really enjoyed Germany.
Yeah. Now, how much, well, let's talk about Germany a little bit. What was your first impressions about Germany?
I mean, I was just blown away. I remember flying into the airport at, I think it was Frankfurt. No. I think it was Frankfurt. And it was just this huge, big city, and I'd never really been inside of a big airport before either. So, I mean, it was just all new to me. I mean, I'm used to country Ohio, where there's cornfields and everyone knows everyone, and here I'm walking into a different country, and it's blowing my mind. When I got to my kind of unit, they told us, like, for the first 30 days, just kind of stay on base. You can go out, like, maybe Friday night or Saturday in the morning, but stay away from the bars and don't do anything stupid. Well, we get over there and we find out that the drinking age there isn't one. And I was 19 when I went over there and couldn't listen and went out to the bars. I ended up getting caught. I didn't get caught drinking, I just got caught being in the bar, and that was enough to get punished as if I was out drinking. But, I mean, it was okay. I mean, I took my punishments on that, and it was just kind of, I think I earned the respect of my leadership maybe a little bit more, just because I wasn't trying to get out of it or do whatnot. That, and plus, I was physically fit, so when they told me to do push-ups, I was like, okay, I can do push-ups. Want me to go run? Okay, I can go run. Want me to do sit-ups? All right, I'll do sit-ups. So, but, I mean, I really liked it. I was able to make some really good German national friends that I still talk to today. I mean, got to see how different culture, a whole different side of life. The beer there was different and amazing. They drink it warm, like room temperature, which when I tell most Americans that, they look at me and just go, what? But it tastes nothing like American beer, though. It's a lot stronger, it's a lot heavier in wheat, and they got different types of it, but I mean, it was pretty good. Yeah. That and just being able to walk down roads in Germany that were older than what this country has even been. I mean, it was just, they had so much cultural history there that you could just see it in everything, their dances and their clothes. I mean, they'd have festivals, I mean, 3-4 times a month. Wow. I mean, it's always something to celebrate in Germany.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. So I mean, I take it you just found plenty to do there in Germany.
I mean, there's beaches, there was swimming pools, we had the gym that we would constantly go to all the time. I mean, they had a crazy nightlife. I mean, bars, discos, clubs. I mean, they'd go party till 6, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really different, but luckily for me, I was really fit, really young, and was willing to do all that.
And go to work.
And then go to work the next day.
So, once you got stationed in Germany, was your job that much different there at your first duty, or was it about the same?
When I got to Germany, we just started training all the time. Like the 173rd is pretty closely related to like the 82nd Airborne. How they're just constantly in the training. Well, we're just constantly in training. We were either at the field or at ranges. I mean, I was trained on the Mark 19, which is a belt-fed automatic 40-mic grenade launcher. 203, which is just a single shot of the grenade launcher. M4, M16, which are both small arms rifles. M9, which is the military's pistol, or the Army's pistol. 240 Bravo, 240 Lima, and 240 Golf. I think the Golf was stationed in tanks, which I got to drive a Bradley in basic, and that was pretty cool. But since I went airborne, I didn't get to see the inside of a tracked up armored vehicle again after that.
Right, yeah.
I got to shoot the guns on that. I was a saw gunner for a while, so the 249, another fully automatic machine gun. The 50 cal. Got to shoot a tow rocket once. That was pretty cool.
Wow.
That was $80,000 rocket.
Yeah.
So I guess I got trained on all types of weapon systems. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but and then I was also a driver. When I first got to the unit, they since I was small, I'm only 5'5", so and I never heard any small jokes all growing up and everything. I knew I was short, but no one really pointed it out to me and was in my face about it. I get into the military, and every single day I heard a short joke. Every day, it's like they couldn't help themselves.
Right. Yeah. They tend to point out the obvious.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since I was short and kind of had that mindset of, yeah, I can do anything physical that you want me to do, they handed me a 249 and gave me all the ammunition for it, along with my full kit and a rucksack. And we go on this death march, which we were in training one day, just doing live fire bounding drills. And my platoon sergeant goes, "You know what? I'm gonna break someone today. Why don't we just go on a ruck march, and we'll stop when I say stop, and we're gonna go up the mountains of Grafenwehr," which Grafenwehr in Germany is just it was a spot where I got told one time that Hitler chose Grafenwehr as his main training ground because it had the most adverse terrain
Wow.
possible.
Mm.
I mean, it had mountains, it had grass, it had moss, it had swamp. I don't think it had any desert area, but that'd be about all it was missing. So we started hiking up these mountains and whatnot, and I got this full pack and this big weapon. Well, I tell myself in my head this whole time, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to be the one that breaks on this and whatnot, and I'll get through. Well, I ended up getting really dehydrated and getting a nosebleed and all types of things while I was on this ruck march. I even had one of our medics come and was walking next to me, and he was just like, if he passes out, I'll poke him with a stick or I'll do something at that point, but he's still walking. So I actually ended up finishing the entire ruck march without passing out or doing anything, which took everything out of me that I could do. But once I crossed the finish line, I was done. And my first sergeant has to come over, and they're trying to give me an IV to rehydrate me. And one of my E5s is pulling my pants open and pouring water on my crotch. And all I can think about is, why are you doing that? He's like, it's going to cool you off. It's going to cool you off. I'm like, all right, whatever. And my first sergeant's trying to give me an IV, although he can't find my veins because I'm so dehydrated. Right. So he just stabbed me, so I got blood all over my uniform. But kind of because of what I did there, and kind of showed that my leadership that I didn't want to quit, and I was pretty determined. They made me, well, at the time I thought this was a demotion, because in combat arms, your unit and your platoon, you're really close with and you're really tight-knit. If you get moved to a different platoon, they kind of sometimes see that as, I mean, they understand that to a point that there's admin stuff, but to some new privates, if they see another private moving to a different platoon, that's kind of like, oh, you betrayed us because we've bonded with you and we're growing with you and suffering with you, and you just move. Well, so I originally took this as a demotion, but I got moved over to headquarters and became the commander's driver. I got told later on that I got put there because they thought that it was okay for me to miss some training because I've already demonstrated that, another side point of that is, in basic, I wasn't a very good shot because I'd never really shot in a weapon before basic training. No one had stepped down, or no one had taken the time to walk me through how to do it, and just really how to do it, pretty much. So when I got to my unit, I finally had one of my team leaders. They were calm with me and sat me down and really took some time and showed me how to shoot. I was able to zero my M4 with 3 rounds inside the size of a dime. And my first sergeant looked at that and was just like, wow, let me shake your hand, and then wanted to hold the thing up and kind of badmouth the, well, not really badmouth, but kind of be like, oh, you all suck, look at this guy, he's not a sniper, he's just as new as you. But I was just thankful that that team leader took the time to really show me how to shoot. So I mean, with that incident and with like not giving up during the ruck marches, they told me that I was getting moved to the commander's driver's position because I could easily get put back on the line with no problems. That and the commander wanted someone who was more squared away. I guess someone. I mean, I don't think I ever made him look bad or do anything like that. But I mean, kind of some of my duties at that point were. We'd go out in the field, but I'd be the guy in the LMTV, which was this big semi-looking thing that we'd haul either cargo or troops or whatever. And well, now when we went to training, I'd either be the guy driving them to the range and driving them back from the range, or doing small little details. And if we weren't training, I'd be, or also during training, wherever the commander went, I kind of went too. So I was his driver. So, I mean, I'd drive him around in the field prob, so he'd want to go and check out the other platoons. So it actually kind of made things a lot difficult for me because he'd want to go and check out all those platoons in this field prob and it's pretty much a big swamp. So where most platoon drivers, all they had to do was drive to a spot, park, do their patrols and whatnot, and then drive back. So they didn't have to really drive through it too much. I'd have to drive to point A, then to point B, then to point C, then all the way back down to A, then over here to E for something. So I was driving all over this stuff. So and I had never had any off-road four-wheeler experience
Wow.
So I mean, that was all taught on the fly. I got stuck a few times, but I mean, it really paid off because when I deployed, I mean, my driving skills were heavily utilized. But I mean, I would also help with paperwork and filing and admin, kind of stuff like that. And then I would also be the troop RTO. So what I would do sometimes is I'd carry around the radio, and I'd relay messages for the commander, pretty much just stuff like that. Which there's a lot more traffic for the commander than say for the team leader.
Oh, man. So you did a lot.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's so you mentioned, I mean, a couple times now, you've mentioned a lot of skills that you've picked up that have applied to your deployment. Let's move on to that. When did you get notice that you were going to deployment, or did you volunteer your services to be deployed?
Well, with my job, it pretty much got hammered into us in basic that we're a Cav Scout, our job is overseas. If we're home in the States, that means we're training. So it pretty much got into my head that I was going to deploy at some point in my military career. I didn't know when, but probably soon and probably often was what everyone kept telling me. So when I got to my unit, I was really actually surprised and glad that I got 2 years there to train and before I left. And then I think like the first year I was there, I don't think I had a clue. Like the guys had just gotten back, but the Army was kind of up in the air. Was okay. Well, do we give them the unit dwell time? Do we not give the unit dwell time? Do we need to have rapid deployments again? Do we not? I mean, plus also there was a I don't really know what the political aspect of it was. I didn't really look in. Being in Germany, we didn't have cable news or any of that. I mean, we'd have like the Army Times news, but playing in the DFACT. But we really didn't know what was going on back in the world. I mean, I came back and when I got out of the military, I came back and was like, saw an iPad and all this text lingo and iWatches, and I was just like, what is this technology? Like I've never, well, iWatch, no, about that, but like there was just a lot new that I came back to and it was just like, wow. But, so about the first year, I mean, we really didn't know what was going on, but about year and a half, they started coming out with, okay, we got orders to deploy at this time. All right, we're gonna start revving up training. We'd have to do, I mean, we'd be in the field for a month, come back for a month, be in the field for a month, come back for a month. But So this time we had to go. I think we did a 3-month field prob at that point, and we just went out and trained for it. And we had certain things that we had to go checked off a list, stuff packed. But I mean, I really didn't think too much about it. I just always knew that I was going to deploy, and when it came time to deploy, I was all right.
Yeah.
I've been training for this thing for 2 years. Let's go.
Right. Did you notify your family?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was in contact with them. When I got to Germany, I mean, I had internet access. It was crappy. I mean, I was paying like €100 for really slow speed. I mean, you wanted to watch a 5-minute YouTube video, it was going to be loading for an hour. I mean, it was awful. But, yeah, I mean, I was in contact with them a lot. I mean, whenever I'd call home or whatnot, I'd talk to my dad for 5 seconds, and he'd go, "Here's your mother." And I'd talk to her for a little bit. And I mean, so when I was deployed, I didn't really talk to them too much, just because in my mind, when I went through basic, I had a girlfriend, and she made it really difficult to get through basic because she was always sending me letters saying she missed me, saying how hard it was without me, and just really, like, just made that time more difficult than what it needed to be. So I had tossed her off to the side long before I was about ready to deploy. But when I deployed, I told myself I was like, okay, that time when you were isolated in a way was really difficult having someone back home. Don't have anyone back home that you're worried about and thinking about constantly. So I started pushing out more of my friends, gearing up for deployment, and kind of not any of the guys I was in the Army with, they were in my unit. Those guys, we just came closer and closer and closer. But I mean, outside friends from high school and whatnot, I just kind of stopped talking to a little bit more. Family members kind of kept the phone calls a little bit shorter, not so much detail in the conversations, just so that when I got to Afghanistan, I could really just focus on my job and what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. So you had mentioned your job was a bit different in Afghanistan.
Oh.
Talk to me about that.
So when we got to Afghanistan, I mean, in the field, we're trained to fight a force-on-force. I mean, when we got closer to deployment, it turned into a COIN ops, which is more like insurgency and kind of what we were actually facing in Afghanistan. So, I mean, the whole going out in ghillie suits and trying to do a 2-man OP in Afghanistan is really hard to do, because the second you leave the gate, they know where you are. You're a big force. You look a lot different from them. You can't really sneak off there. We used to have kids that would sit by our gate to our cop all the time, and whenever we left, they would fly a kite made out of a old plastic bag, and they let everyone down the street know that we were coming, and if they were going to attack us, they'd prepare for it. If they weren't going to attack us, they'd just be like, okay, Americans are coming through.
Wow. What were your initial thoughts about Afghanistan?
I really didn't know too much about it. If you would have asked me at the time, I don't even think I could have pointed it out on the map for you.
Right.
I mean, I didn't really go there with like that I just want to kill, kill, kill mentality that some people in the military seem to get. I mean, I just kind of went there as I'm here to do a job, and like I said, what really stuck through me from what my drill sergeant said in basic was, you're fighting for the guys to your right and your left, and I'd grown to love all the dudes that I was with. I mean, we were just one big family.
Right.
And so, I mean, when I went over there, it was just a new journey, a new step, something new in my life. When we were there, it kind of switched from, we weren't going out and really doing exactly what we were training to do through basic and when we were out in the field all those times. It was more of like presence patrols and just kind of just drive out there and see if you get attacked. see if something happens. Just try to store up or stir up a hornet's nest or something. But my first 3 months when I was in Afghanistan, first 3 months, I worked I was still with the headquarters troop, so I was still the commander's driver. Well, this also I got a lot more duties added to me when I got down there. I then became his bodyguard, and then the TOC operator, which is a Tactical Operations Command. So I would be still the troop RTO, but it was just if the commander went out on mission, I would generally go out with him, have the radio, be his driver, do whatever he needed. But if he wasn't going out on mission, then I would be in our command center, and I'd be on 3 different radios, listening to 3 different missions, while also typing on a computer in an instant messenger chat room, while looking at 4 different computer monitor screens, looking at the cops, like surrounding perimeters and stuff. I mean, and I would do things like I would send up like 9-line medevacs. Like if someone got hurt, they'd tell me where they were, and I'd go and relay that message to the bird. Or if a bird was coming, or if a plane was coming on station to either provide overwatch or air support, then I'd let them know when they were in, and I relayed to the platoon sergeant when they were coming. I mean, sometimes we had a Air Force JTAC that could do that, or a Army Forward Observer, but I mean, we didn't always have them. So I mean, I was kind of sending up reports. Every time people went out on mission, there was always reports to send up, even if nothing happened on that mission. And then after that 3 months, my first sergeant got rotated, and when he got rotated, I was able to get rotated to the line, because he was the one kind of preventing me from doing that, because he said I was a victim of my own success. Mm-hmm. So I was stuck answering telephones for a while. I mean, and then also when I was in that time, I became like the comm sergeant's like kind of helper, and I also at one point I took over the supply of the COP, so people had to come to me to get chem lights or their batteries or stuff like that. Hmm. So I mean, I had a lot of stuff. I mean, I was an E3 private, and I'd have a Connex full of $1 million worth of, like, millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment. And I'm just like, wow, cool, all right. And then when I got switched to the line, and as I started going out on missions every day, I mean, it was different. I mean, there was more excitement, more danger being off the COP than, which a COP is a combat outpost. Some reason it's not popping up in my head, but
well, describe to me a little bit more about what you did, being on the front lines.
Okay. I mean, what I would just go out and do is, we got attacked almost every day, whether it be incoming fire or small arms fire, or RPGs, IEDs, 107 rockets. I mean, they would attack us with all kinds of stuff. And so, if I were to go through a normal like patrol, it would either be mounted or dismounted. So we'd either be in our trucks or not in our trucks and go out on foot. If we had to go out in our trucks, we'd go out in a line. We'd normally, in Afghanistan, we pretty much stuck to the roads, although we took those off-road a lot too. I mean, we were driving big up-armored, like, kind of look like an up-armored ambulance, MRAPs and MATVs. Just a lot of weight, real top-heavy. And then we'd have to drive these on thin little roads on mountainsides where if you go an inch to your right, you're going to fall down this mountain side and die. If you go an inch to your left, you're just going to be scraping the side of this mountain. I mean, so like those driving skills I learned in the off-road and the training and stuff, like really helped me when I was in Afghanistan to keep me from, because I was always, I mean, being a driver, I was really nervous because if I flipped this truck, I mean, a lot of people then had the potential to die because of just things getting thrown around when the truck's rolling. And so I was always worried about hurting my brothers by not driving correctly. Plus, we'd go through crazy stuff that was way beyond the scope of a normal person's like driving ability. And I mean, if we get into a contact, we'd have your gunners go out and they'd start laying down they'd start returning fire, and then we'd kick out our dismounts and they'd go and do what they're gonna go do, whether it be flanking or laying down more cover fire, or if they're gonna bound to a certain area and attack from there. But I mean, it's kind of all up to the situation. And then what we try to do is we just go to, we do what's called key leader engagements all the time, where we just try to go into a new village or a new town or something and try to talk with the village elder, find out what they want, how can we help them, pretty much just what do they need. Do you guys need a well? Do you guys need a school? And our higher up, our officers and whatnot normally handle that. I would just be either, if we had a key leader engagement and if I was still with the commander, I'd take notes from him sometimes, or I'd stand and guard the door, just stuff like that. There towards the end of my deployment, I had to start carrying around this thing called a Thor, and it's this big backpack with this big antenna on the back, and what it's supposed to do is it works in junction with another Thor box that someone else is carrying, and it's supposed to like block like cell phone signals. That way, if we walked over an IED that was triggered by a cell phone, it wouldn't go off on us. And that thing was just heavy and a pain in the butt. And then they started telling us, we started putting our camelbacks over top of these things, and they came back and were like, stop, don't do that. It's irradiating your water. I'm like, what? So what is it doing to me on my back?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, so, I mean, that was kind of, and that we'd only take those out on foot patrols. All of our trucks had little ones in those too. I mean, we had all kinds of little specialty equipment, this gadget does this and this gadget does that. I moved around to 3 different cops while I was there. I was at Cop Sanchez, Cop Polyalam, and Cop McLean. I was at Cop McLean for the most, and then we ended up shutting down, I think it was Cop Polyalam. And then towards the end of my time in Afghanistan, we were at Cop Sanchez, and what we were really doing there was it was kind of like a government building, and what we'd really do is just kind of pull security on like the Afghani politicians or something. I'm not quite sure who was in there, but we just kind of pulled guard on a building, and we had some special op guys that, I mean, they'd go out and do stuff, so we'd help them sometimes. But I mean, personally, I really didn't like working with them just because they kind of, when we weren't attached to the special forces, we got to do a lot more stuff, like on our own. When we were kind of with them, they kind of wanted to play Big Daddy and be like, okay, we'll take care of everything. And so, that's just my opinion. I mean, we did a lot in Afghanistan. I mean, it'd be a long story to go through and probably walk through everything that I did in Afghanistan.
Yeah. I mean, we might have to revisit that then. Well, let's talk about you coming back home. How many years did you, or how long were you in Afghanistan?
I was in Afghanistan for 9 months.
9 months, okay. And then did you come back to Germany?
Yep. Came back to Germany, and we were there for about a week before we were allowed to go on leave. Then we'd go back to the States, and some would go back to the States, some would stay in Germany, some would take their deployment money and go to Australia with their wife or something. But So I came back to Germany, came back home. I mean, most things were good. Uh, Mom, Dad, everyone kind of welcomed me back. It was a good time. Stayed in Germany then for another year, and then got out. So I mean, I had a pretty good time of a lot of training up before deployment, and then a little bit of still being in the military when I got back from deployment and trained in the kind of the newer privates and.
Okay. What made you decide to get out?
Well, I remember that I had originally joined to be in the medical field. So I was like, okay, well, I got a combat deployment, been in combat, got my combat action badge, got my airborne wings. I mean, when I wore my dress blues, I was pretty stacked. So I was like, all right, let me see what kind of different jobs I can go and do. And then when I was talking to the retention NCO, like surgical technician just popped up. I mean, it said like attention to detail. I thought I had found the dream job. I was like, oh, cool, this. Let me do this. They're like, oh, cool, yeah, no problem. You can do it. We'll get you done. Bureaucracy of the Army kicked in, and it was, oh, this T wasn't dotted and that I wasn't crossed. So it ended up being a no. So then I went and was like, well, all right, well, can I go to school? And I'm like, well, you're in Germany. Do you want to do like online school? Like in between our field probs? I was like, no. I was like, well, I heard another private, or as a specialist at the time, an E4. I got back from Afghanistan, and I was talking with another specialist. He was telling me about this early out for college education program, and how you can get out up to 3 months early from your ETS orders to get into school. So I started looking into that, and I started asking my NCOs and everything, and none of them had no clue on what it was or how to implement it or anything. So I had to read up on it, research it, go ask this guy, hey, how do you do this? Go ask that guy, hey, how do you do this? Pretty much by the end of it, I had to write the book on how to do it for our unit. But I mean, it was tough. I didn't think I was gonna get it there like for a little bit, just because of how things were going. But like the last minute, it kind of was like, okay, well, if I'm gonna get this, it needs to happen now, and it just kind of came in. So I went from not knowing I was gonna get out of the Army to, well, not knowing if I was gonna get out of the Army to, okay, you're gonna get out in the Army in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Get everything you need to get done, and
Right.
go.
That's usually how it works, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of what, I mean, I was hoping for kind of not a better job, but more of a job I can use in the civilian world. But since that didn't happen, just kind of figured, hey, might as well try school.
All right. So now you're in school,
Yep.
correct? What are you taking?
Right now I'm going to Wright State University and taking organizational leadership with a minor in veteran services.
That's great. And so have you joined any organizations or anything now that you're out?
Yep. I've joined the Combat Vets Motorcycle Association, and well, that's been just a great experience for me, because when I came back, you know, I was used to jumping out of airplanes, I was used to blowing stuff up, I was used to shooting big guns. Well, can't do any of that anymore. Well, not without paying for it or getting in trouble. So, I mean, I still wanted that excitement, I still wanted that adrenaline rush. So I started, took some of my deployment money and went and bought a little motorcycle and just started riding it, and then started seeing some guys walk around with a combat vet motorcycle patch on their back. I'm like, I'm a combat vet. Well, what is this? And they just started talking to me about it, and found out that there's this whole group of people that like to ride and are into it for the same reasons that I was. So,
Absolutely. Why not?
oh, yeah.
So how so you're in this organization. That's a way you stay kind of connected with the military in a sense. Do you also stay in contact with some of the guys you were deployed with or in the unit with?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of them, actually. Facebook's been great in that aspect. We're all over the world now, so I mean, we're all spread out, but Facebook's been a really good thing on how we can communicate and send each other little little snippets. I mean, plus, when people's phone numbers change every 3 months, so their Facebook doesn't change. So, I mean, but a couple guys decided not to get into the social media type thing, and got the Facebook, so you're kind of more in the spotlight if you're using social media, so that even if someone's thinking about you but doesn't know your number or where you are, they can search for you on Facebook and still find you.
Right.
But I mean, I talk to those guys all the time. I mean, I miss them every day, and yeah.
Well, just some final closing thoughts here. So now that you've kind of experienced it all, you experienced quite a bit just in the few years that you've been in. It seems like you've had a very successful career. What are your feelings on military and even combat now?
I don't know. I mean, it'd be a lie if I said that I didn't miss Afghanistan. I mean, I miss the adrenaline rush. I miss the camaraderie. I miss feeling like I was a part of something bigger than myself, and that being around danger. I mean, I have no ill feelings towards the military. I mean, were they rough on me? Yeah, but they also needed to be, because I was going to a rough place. I mean, when I was in basic, I might have complained about that, but looking back on it now, no, I'm extremely glad that people didn't take it easy on me and that things were as hard as they were, because I went to a hard and dangerous place. I mean, my thoughts on combat, I mean, it's awful that it happens, but it's also human nature. It's been around since we've been around. So, I mean, it's kind of a question for the ages, though.
Is this, does your experience maybe give you a new found respect for those that have done it before you?
Oh yeah. Like I said, like when I was in high school, I didn't really have that good of an impression of the military.
Right.
But now, walking in their shoes, doing that, I mean, to look back now at the veterans who've come before me, I mean, I try not to hold anyone to a specific standard. I think if you served, then you served. If you stayed back in a support unit and didn't go to combat, you're not any less of a soldier or a man or a woman or a person than the person that did go to combat. You just have two different experiences. So I try to keep that in mind when I'm talking to older veterans, that they had different experience. Yes, it could have been a lot harder than what I felt. It could have been a lot, not as hard as what I went through, but it was still their journey and still their path. But the more and more I read about and talk with veterans about past wars, it's just, and those guys just had it rough, and especially like Vietnam. I mean, when I came back from Afghanistan, me and a couple buddies of mine went to Myrtle Beach just to celebrate. I mean, guys we had deployed with, we just met up in Ohio and drove down to South Carolina. Yeah, and when we were down there, I mean, we had some people, like, since we were right next to I think it's a military base right next to Myrtle Beach, they all knew we were military right off the bat, because we had just gotten military tattoos, and we were letting our facial hair grow since we were on leave. So you'd hear people snickering like, "Oh, those guys are special forces," and we'd just sit there and go, "No, we're not." That's funny though. But I mean, you had people that would come back and would thank us for our service and whatnot. But that was also the first time I ever got called a baby killer. And I was just, that jaw dropped, my buddies' faces just got red. I could tell that all they wanted to do was, it was just this middle-aged woman, we were at a bar on the beach, just decided to come up to us and call us baby killers. I mean, I had to grab my buddies and tell them not to do anything and whatnot, because they were just about ready to chomp her out. I was like, no, can't do that here. We don't need no trouble. So we just kind of walked away. And then I hear these stories about these Vietnam guys who come back and are getting picketed by everyone and spit on and So I mean, I'm really thankful that I mean, all the guys in past wars and conflicts and military. I'm just thankful that because of what they were doing, allowed me to do what I did, and will allow future generations.
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I mean, just if it was just one, I mean, any veteran shouldn't have to go through that. But yeah, I completely agree. So, last question. I guess if there was any legacy that you wanted to leave behind, or anything that you wanted to, any message that you wanted to give to those that would follow you, or those that are listening to this, what would that message be?
Well, I'd say if you're going to join the military, and if you're going to deploy, say, to a combat zone, Iraq, Afghanistan, or new conflict maybe sometime in the future, I would say try to accept death in whichever way you can, because indirect fire is a roll of the dice, hitting an IED is a roll of the dice. I mean, you can be as well trained, as disciplined as any, but that's not going to save you from a random shot or someone's ignorance. But if you go there, just remember that it doesn't matter what the conflict is. You are fighting for the guys to your right and to your left. I mean, they're Americans just like you are, and that's what you're there for.
That's good. Anything else that you'd like to share that we may have missed?
No, pretty round up.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for your story.